everybody! So Crystal and I are here today to do the next edition of our Colourful Covers series. Usually there's 4 of us in the video, but it's just 2 of us today. It's gonna be a quicker video this time. Yeah. But because it's October, we decided to do black book covers. That doesn't mean that these books are spooky per se, but
far from spooky.
Yeah, but they are spooky looking. So without further ado, we each have 5 books. About like 5 books. And but yeah, and they're all, the premise of the series is we're recommending books based solely on the color of the cover and not with anything to do with the content. So let's dive right in. What's your first book?
My first book is City of Thieves by David Benioff of Game of Thrones fame. If anybody's not angry about the last season, I would definitely recommend his book. I read this maybe about 10 years ago now, and it's a book that has stuck with me for a very long time. So I've been really looking forward to do black books for like months now. This is set during the Nazis' siege of Leningrad, and our main character, Lev, is arrested for looting and thrown in jail, where he meets Kolya, this other slightly older guy, and kind of, instead of being executed, they're given this mission to go out and find a dozen eggs for this colonel's daughter's wedding cake. Seems ridiculous, but hey, it's an absolutely fantastic story. So these 2 go off in search of eggs, and the atmosphere is just so cinematic. It's just so atmospheric. And there's like scenes in it that I could still picture today of like them with another group trudging through the deep snow.
Right.
This like weird cabin in the woods that may or may not be a brothel, if I remember correctly. And like just this coming of age story of this kid who was like arrested and is now just on this thing in this really harsh environment in these harsh times. And yeah, it's...
I've seen it around a lot, and it's one I still want to get to.
Yes, and I saw this at a thrift store recently. I had owned it, and then in the great purge of moving, I got rid of it, and then I've been wanting to read it again. So I found it, and then I also discovered that the audiobook is read by Ron Perlman, who is going to have the most amazing voice for this, I think. So I'm definitely putting it back on my TBR again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, so my first book is a non-fiction book, and that is Devil in the White City by Erik Larson. Murder, Magic, and Madness at the Fair That Changed America. So this is a true crime novel about the Chicago World's Fair, like the whole construction of the World's Fair, and it really did just change and innovate so many things and just change the face of Chicago forever, and America, which is fascinating. But also at the same time that was happening, what they dubbed America's first serial killer was on the loose in Chicago. So you have both narratives of this serial killer and the construction of the World Fair. It is such a fascinating book. If you like true crime, I highly recommend it. I read this after going to Chicago for the first time, and Chicago really is like all of like the Shed Aquarium, and like there's just so many big epic things that were built because of this World Fair that are still in Chicago today, and you can really like see the landmarks. It was also like the Navy Pier is like a big part of Chicago, and that was built for the World Fair, and that was the first time a Ferris wheel was ever built.
Oh wow.
And there's just so many things like that, and it's just so it's so fascinating to see all these things that were invented specifically for this fair, while also seeing this dark and gritty underside to the city with this serial killer. Really, really liked it. I believe I listened to the audiobook, and it was fantastic. So highly recommend this if you like true crime. Yeah.
Nice.
All right, what's up for you?
Next up for me is 3 Dark Crowns by Kendare Blake, and all its consecutive books. So basically the Queens of Fenburn series. In the past 6 months, I have been buddy reading this series with 2 friends, and it's a perfect buddy read kind of book, because every day you're speculating on what could possibly happen, and then the next day everyone was wrong. Like, it's just keeps giving. So it is, if you don't know, it is about 3 queens who are born on an island. They're triplets, and at one point they will have to fight to the death, because there can only ever be one true crowned queen. And it's just a roller coaster ride of like a bit of magic, a bit of insanity, and like the goddess who only wants one of them to be. There's magical elements where they each have a gift. One is a poisoner, one is an elemental and controls the weather and nature. The other's a naturalist and can speak to animals. And then there's other gifts that have existed in history that just aren't as prevalent and strong anymore, but just a great fantasy. 3 sisters on an island gonna battle it out, and just so much like intrigue. And I'm halfway through the last book in the series and I'm just like, oh goodness.
It's perfect time to binge.
Yeah, perfect time to binge some fantasy. Just pick this series up and I don't think you'd be disappointed.
Cool. So my next one is a very sweet little graphic novel called Everyone's an Alien When You're an Alien Too by Jomny Sun. This is blurbed by Lin-Manuel Miranda, but this is just about a little story of Jomny, an alien sent to study Earth, and it's just basically this little alien's like observations about what is happening on planet Earth and how everything's not really how we see it, and like the bad things, he's like, oh, well maybe it's not so bad, like this is how I'm viewing it as an outside person. And like it's just so sweet, and like I just absolutely loved it. It's a super quick read. If you want something that will kind of both uplift you and address like your insecurities, and just, it also, I think it made me cry at one point.
Sounds precious.
But yes, precious is a good word for it. It's a fast read, it's delightful, and I don't have Twitter, but I know that Jomny Sun on Twitter is like, he has like a delightful Twitter, and he also illustrated Lin-Manuel Miranda's little like tweet book that he put
that's
out.
Right.
Yeah,
Put out
so they have like a partnership, so.
Oh, that's so nice.
It's such a delightful little book. Highly recommend.
Nice. Next up for me is an anthology. It is Star Wars from a certain point of view. It's celebrating the 40th anniversary of Star Wars. And in it, there are a bunch of short stories by a plethora of different types of authors, all that take place during the course of the first movie. So while Han and Leia and Luke are doing all the things they're doing, these are people who just exist and
That's cool.
are doing what they do, kind of like Rosencrantz and Guildenstern did. It's like, well, what was everybody else doing?
Right.
Lots of amazing people in this. I haven't read all of the stories yet, but I've read one. There's a Boba Fett story in here by Paul Dini of Batman the Animated Series fame, which, as a massive Boba Fett fan, it was just a really great story. Meg Cabot, who did The Princess Diaries, writes a really sweet story about Aunt Beru. And there's one by Ben Acker and Ben Blacker. If anybody listens to the Thrilling Adventure Hour, they wrote one about a stormtrooper who just gets off shift and he's like so close to being able to like unsuit and have a shower, and the intruder alarm goes off in the Death Star and he's just like, I could just have a shower. And one of the Moff guys shows up and he's like, do you hear that alarm? Do you think it's just for other people? No, it's so he's sent immediately back to work, and he's just like, oh god. And it's just, it's fantastic. Like I said, I haven't read all of it. I'm looking forward to reading more, but it's really fun to just pick up and be like, where are we today?
Yeah, cool.
And it's pretty.
It is pretty. Next up I have Labyrinth Lost by Zoraida Cordova. I read this book a few months ago and really fell in love with the world. It is about a girl named Alex, who is a bruja, and she is the most powerful witch in generations, or in her generation, or in a generation, but Alex wants nothing to do with magic. She doesn't want any magical powers, and so on her birthday, at a death day celebration, she does magic to rid herself of all of her magical abilities, but that backfires, and instead it vanishes her entire family. Ooh. So that didn't go as planned. So basically she has to travel to Los Lagos, which is like the in-between land, and try to find her family and get her family back and undo her bad.
Yeah, that sounds good.
It is the first book in a series. I think the second book follows another character, and I think I like that one even more. It's called Bruja Born, and they're just great. I totally recommend them. I picked this up on a whim at a library sale, as you can see, and I'm so glad that I finally did, because it's a wonderful story.
Nice. Next up, a little bit more Star Wars for you. I apologize. But this is the Han Solo Trilogy by A.C. Crispin, which includes The Paradise Snare, The Hutt Gambit, and Rebel Dawn. I know nothing in the world is canon anymore, but to me, this is my canon. I just loved her writing. I loved the adventure. I think she captured Han Solo so well. It starts off before Han even meets Chewie, and what he did as kind of like a scoundrel when he was younger, and like who he became. And then it also is how he got into debt with Jabba the Hutt in the second book. And it's just this like beautiful arc of a story throughout a galaxy that we all love. They go to Coruscant and they go to other islands. Not islands, planets. Sheesh. And he meets Lando. We see how he wins the Millennium Falcon. And it's just, it was so good. I read all 3 books back to back, like ebook wise on my e-reader. And then I think when we were in Seattle, or we were somewhere, we went to Barnes & Noble, and I'm like, I'm not leaving without this.
It's such a beautiful edition. It's like silver gilded pages.
It was, so beautiful. And it was one of those books, trilogies, stories, where I was like, at the time where I was like, I would love to reach out to this person and be like, you wrote an amazing book. And I went on Twitter, and A.C. Crispin actually passed away like 3 months before I had read this, and I was like, I wish I could tell her how amazing her book was. Like, I was just so excited, and I've recommended it to like many people.
Star Wars fans.
Yeah, my boyfriend's brother really enjoyed it.
Awesome.
And I just love seeing inside the head of Boba Fett as well. You follow him around a bit, and I'm like, oh, you're so awesome.
Cool.
But if you're a fan, and canon be damned, definitely think you should pick that up.
Nice. Now, I'm mentioning a book that everybody and their mother has read and knows what it's about, but I found this really beautiful edition at the thrift store a couple of weeks ago, and I needed to show it off. And if you're in the UK, I'm sure you've seen it, but I found this edition of The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas with these like beautiful yellow stained pages.
It's very nice.
Everybody knows what this book's about. It's fantastic. It deserves all the hype. If you haven't read it yet, I'm imploring you to read it. It's just so good. I haven't seen the movie yet, and I need to rectify that. But this edition, guys,
Collector's edition.
Yeah, it's a collector's edition from the UK, and it's just absolutely beautiful. So I couldn't not bring it up in this video because I am obsessed.
I actually haven't read it, but I did just watch the movie on my flight home from my vacation, and the movie was really well done, and I definitely think I do want to read the book because I'm sure it's a lot.
It's very good.
Got a lot more going on in it.
And I love the original cover too, but I was like, saw this and I was like,
it has so many covers.
I need it.
Yeah, that one's really nice.
But yeah, you guys know what it's about. It's fantastic. Go read it.
Okay, so my last one has just a little bit more Star Wars in it, but a lot of other things in it. And this is a non-fiction book. It is The Art of Drew Struzan, who, if you can see some of the posters on there, he is a Hollywood cinematic poster artist. And if you're ever like, wow, that is a really beautiful poster, it's because he did it.
Cool.
He did all the Harry Potter posters that originally came out. He did all the original Star Wars posters, Indiana Jones, Hook, Back to the Future. I mean, the guy's my hero.
That's so cool.
So when I saw that, I think I first saw it advertised one of the years that we went to Comic-Con. And then my boyfriend bought it for me for Christmas, and I've actually read it cover to cover as well. Like, a lot of the stuff is really interesting. It has a nice foreword by Frank Darabont, who adapted The Shawshank Redemption, and of course Drew Struzan did that poster as well. And it's just like, and it shows different like concept art for different ideas that he would have had. I think the Back to the Future ones are really interesting. There were a lot of different incarnations of that before it was decided on.
Neat.
And it's just a beautiful thing to have.
Yeah, it's
and
a beautiful book.
If you're interested in movies or just love, I mean, they're such iconic films that he's done. So if like you're interested in those movies or just how artwork comes to be and stuff, it's a nice little history lesson. But I love
Also
it.
make a good Christmas gift for somebody.
Yeah. I love it so much I even brought it here in like a paper bag so it didn't get ruined
Not
in my bag.
damaged.
I'm
Nice.
like, nothing can happen to this ever.
Cool. So my last book is a novella that Tor randomly sent us, and I am so glad they did, because this is one of my favorite books of the year.
Oh, wow.
And that is The Monster of Elendhaven by Jennifer Giesbracht. This came out in September, I believe. It's very dark and very grisly and very adult, but it's about this kind of monster, but a human that washes up on the shore of this like gritty, oily, dirty city and finds that he is unkillable.
Ooh.
Like you can cut off his limb, like you can stab him, you can gut him, you can do anything to him and he cannot die.
Oh, jeez.
And he becomes obsessed with a frail young man who can twist minds with magic, and together they launch a plan so dark and cruel that readers will find themselves cheering for blood and for these Avengers to consummate their horrible passion for each other. It is twisted, and it's not going to be for everybody, but I loved it, and it just left me wanting more.
Interesting.
Because they're both deplorable, but at the same time, you can't help but like root for them. It's so well done. It's such a good novella. Definitely check it out. I will be reading anything else that Jennifer Giesbracht puts out because
Interesting.
I loved this.
I might just throw my TBR out the window and use this for Spookathon because that just sounds amazing.
It's great. And it's short, which is great for a spookathon. So, just gonna take that. Alright guys, so that was some books with black covers that we recommend to you. Let us know some of your favorites that we left out in the comments down below, because there are a lot of them.
So many. Although it was funny because when we first talked about doing this video and have been doing black books, you're like, but there's so many, every book is black. And I was looking at my shelf and I was like, no. There's like no covers, and
That are
like
mostly
there's so few of them, and I was like, oh, I don't read the right kind of books.
But we got there. We'll be back with another one of these soon. I don't know which color we'll do next, but we'll figure it out. We'll definitely have another one of these videos coming for you. Yeah. And I guess we'll just wrap it up.
Yeah.
If you like this video, give it a big thumbs up and subscribe for more. Happy reading, and thanks for being awesome.
Bye.
Bye.